Well, thank you for coming. And we did start on time. And we're glad to have you here. And we encourage anybody that would like to come and visit us when we're open on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. They need a little help with the genealogy. Tuesdays and Thursdays. Or, you know. I think I gotta watch it. Anyway, come on in. We're glad to help. And the people that are volunteers are very knowledgeable. They can really help you. I gave you tickets tonight, and what we're giving away is a couple of copies of this book. Now, this was a series done by Mildred Howard, who some of you might have heard of. She was a Cape Breton genealogist, and she's done some really terrific research in these. What she went through was all the existing Cape Breton newspapers from the 1800s, and she picked out all the vital statistics, and they're in this, well, not this book, they're in this and 4 other versions. You can't buy the book anymore. We have the only few copies that are still available, and we generally give them away. So what we'll do, if everybody's okay with it, I'll pick the numbers. Okay. I can't read, man, because I'm not bad. We'll mix them up a little bit.
In your pocket.
All right, there's one winner. 4233. Last 4 numbers. 4233. Oh, Alex. She's the last guy in, wins the prize. So maybe it doesn't pay to come early. Now, one more. Um, 4232.
Oh, my heavens.
Look at that last guy's in. And I mixed them up. I really
You
did.
didn't share them up with your wife.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, just tell you a couple of things. If you decide when it's all over you'd like to join the Genealogy Society, no pressure. If you do, you do. If you don't, you don't. That's fine. But there's application forms on that table over there. There's some nice little pictures there that Patsy brought in. You can help yourself to them. The bathroom's in this back corner down here. What else? Oh, there's a donation box down back, but you don't need to put anything in it. Just it's there if you want. Anyway, so I'll stop talking. I'll turn the time over to Patsy. Just tell you a little bit. Patsy's from Reserve originally, living in Utah now. Has been pursuing family history and genealogy for longer than she probably want to admit. And she has some interesting ideas, a little different than what we do all the time, but genealogy is genealogy, so no matter which way you do it, they all make sense. So we'll turn the time over to Patsy Brown, pardon me, it was LeBlanc when she was here. So we'll turn the time over to Patsy.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Okay. Okay, so I guess I do things a little differently than the norm.
A little closer to your face.
Okay, better now?
Yeah.
So I've been doing genealogy and family history for about 30 years, and I like the family history side a lot more than the genealogy side. I'm not going to try and cram everything that I've learned into over the past 20-some years into, 45 minutes. I just want to touch on the basics of the parts of it that I love the most, and the parts that that I've learned to put together to put a family history story, to how to make it come together and to make it easier for people to write their own story. And make it easy so that it's not hard. I'm not a professional genealogist. I'm just a nerd who loves family history. I have earned my family history certificate. That doesn't make me a professional. It takes, they're way up here, and I'm kind of just right here. But I just would love to help other people be able to write their own story. It's not rocket science. It's really easy. The important thing is that you have to do it now. Time changes in the blink of an eye. It can happen just as quickly as tomorrow or in the next hour. And so you want to take advantage of writing down your special moments as they're happening. You don't want to wait 20 years to do that. There is a little bit of a difference between genealogy and family history. And some people think it's the same thing. I think there's a little bit of a difference. How many of you think that there is a difference? Okay, fair amount. Some of you are on my side. How many of you tried to do genealogy, got started on it, and just felt like you were drowning? Yeah. How many of you tried to write your family history, got started on it, and just like started drowning? Yeah. It's a big task. I mean, if you're not a writer, if you don't know how to just even write journal entries or anything, you're just like, you start writing and then you're like, do I write this? Do I write that? Do I make a note of this? I mean, what do I write? How many people are here tonight because that's what they want to know? They want to learn how to write. Good job. How many people are here because their family members forced them to come? I have to admit, I'm very humbled by that because they're my family. And that's what this is all about, folks. Family supporting family, and I'm going to get emotional about it because I love them dearly. And this is a moment for me that I'll put in my family history. I've attended many events in Salt Lake City on family history and genealogy. And there are many. Ancestry.com holds huge events out there. And basically, at a lot of those events, I hear the same thing over and over again. But one thing I learned by attending a lot of those things is that even though I hear the same thing over and over again, I also always learn something new. And I always feel an excitement build up inside of me every single time I go. So every time I learn something new, every time I hear the same things over and over again, I also learn new things. And so I call those new things little golden nuggets, okay? So no matter how many times you come to these things, no matter how many times you think you're going to hear the same thing over and over again, even if it's not genealogy and family history, if it's a medical conference, if it's like child care conference, no matter what it is, always look for those golden nuggets because we're here to learn no matter what it is. So find your golden nuggets in life. Those things are here to help you grow. One thing I want to point out before we even really get started is there is no such thing as a perfect family. There isn't. And there is no such thing as having a perfect life. Anyone who claims to have a perfect life and a perfect family has simply found a formula for happiness. And they make the best of what life has to offer them. Happy is the person who's tapped into that knowledge. And I'm forgetting to use my slides. Sorry. Okay, I have to catch up to myself. Okay, we kind of covered that. Even back to the beginning of time, as far back as Adam and Eve, they even had problems. They found out what it meant to be disobedient, and they had to figure out how to till and toil. And then after bearing children, they had to deal with teenagers. So, you know, God gave parents the dreaded teenager for a very good reason. Because when we have those cute little babies, we can never picture giving them up. But then those cute little babies turn into teenagers, and all of a sudden we're like, yeah, we can let go of that one. Yeah, not going to miss that one for a while. Go let him spread his wings. So the perfect family is a matter of opinion. My mission here tonight is to light a fire under you to get you excited about leaving a legacy for your children, your grandchildren, and your great-grandchildren, and so on. That's what this is all about. If you don't have children, maybe you have nieces and nephews that are just as important. If you don't have nieces and nephews, that doesn't matter either, because you're still a part of some sort of family. You have parents, you have grandparents and great-grandparents. So you came from somewhere, you have a story, and your story still needs to be told. So let's get started. A few thoughts. Genealogy versus family history. We talked about that for a minute. Genealogy is all about dates and numbers, kind of like math. That's how I look at genealogy. To me, it's kind of like math. You have dates, numbers with places thrown in, all about your ancestors and descendants. So it's kind of like charts. Family history is genealogy plus a person's history and story. And that history, it brings the person to life. It's kind of like math with a lot of English essays. Okay, so it's like going to school again. It's also a lot of research, historical context, which is important for family history stories, investigation, interviewing, photography, maps, migration, bookmarking, sources, citation, and I bet you I just scared you like crazy, and you think you can't do your family history. Another way to look at it is this. Genealogy is like the skeleton, and family history is putting flesh on the skeleton. Does that make more sense? There are a lot of opinions on this, and everyone who loves family history and genealogy as much as I do, they tend to argue the point, but does it really matter? Because in the long run, it all comes together anyway. It's like 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. So if I say family history or genealogy, we all come to the same conclusion, and it's really not a foreign language. I have one more thing for you to think about. Is there a difference between family history and the history of the family? Just kind of switching it around a little there. And I just want to touch on this briefly. As you go back a generation or two, you're going to notice some things that are sort of different in generations past. It'll help you understand your ancestors just a little bit, okay? So you may find that the role of the family in family life will switch a little bit as you go back, and you'll notice that. And to help you understand that a little bit, we'll go back just a few generations, just really quick. So you'll notice this era is the 50s and the 60s, and it's called, does anybody know what this era is called? Want to take a guess?
Patriarch.
The Golden Age. Oh, it says it. Never mind. That was to help me. I forgot to take it off. I thought you were really smart there, Luke. Thank you. Oh, it even says patriarchy. I was going to say, do you know what the Golden Age is? But it's patriarchy. Do you know what that means? No, I'm kidding. This era was mostly under male domination. Children were seen and not heard. Okay? And then we moved on to the era of the 70s and 80s. I didn't want to go back any further than this because I think you have the idea. Okay, I don't want to embarrass my family. I put this in for a reason.
Oh, yeah, right.
Because 70s pictures actually look like this because of the poor quality of photography. Right? I mean, let's face it. And the clothing. And the hairstyles. This was called the Age of Individualism. This era saw the change of domination switch from male to female. known as matriarchy. Women became more active in decision-making and not just homemaking. They also became more active as breadwinners, as husbands became more active in household and child-rearing duties, supposedly. I knew my mother was going to do that.
Well, she didn't cry.
She went, yeah, right. Well, in some areas. Okay, and then the area of the 1990s and going forward is known as the Age of Entitlement. This era saw another change of rules switched to the child of the family and became known as filiarchy. The needs of the child became center focus of the family unit, and the child was no longer seen but not heard, and became the center of the family. That's just a very brief introduction of the history of the family. It's from the book Domestic Revolutions by Kellogg and Mintz. It's a really great book, and I really enjoyed reading it. As you begin to look back into your families, keep that in mind as you notice that things changed over time. And as things pop up and you begin to wonder why things happened the way they did. However, this is Cape Breton. And I don't know about you, but in my family, I only tended to see one kind of archy in my family growing up. Can anyone guess what that was? Matriarchy. Yeah. I think it still exists very strongly around here. So tonight we are going to concentrate on getting started on writing your family history because I only have a short amount of time here. But and we're just going to briefly touch on some things. I'm going to leave you my email address at the end, and if you have any questions on steps that you need to take and any questions you have on any bumps in the road, just email me. I'll get right back to you and help you along on your merry way to writing your family history. Let's see. Learning the correct way to write your family history is like learning to do just about anything else, anything in life. Time, patience, and knowledge. So here a little, there a little, and don't run any faster than you can walk. So, as you're writing your family history, think about something that you want to leave to your posterity, something that has meaning, okay? So, what you want to leave to your children, your grandchildren, your niece, your nephew, something of importance that they'll remember you by. Think about something that you inherited that means a lot to you because it reminds you of your mother, or your grandmother, your father, or your aunt, or whatever. Someone that you just cherished in your life. Think about trying to tell your posterity what that means to you. And I'll bet you'll receive more than a blank look from them because they're not going to be as excited about something as you are. Because let's face it, they won't have the same attachment as you have to whatever it is. So I have this teacup that belonged to my grandmother, and every time I look at it, I think of her. But it sits in my china cupboard, and I'm the only one that will go and look at it and think of my grandmother. My children have never met her. They don't know her, they don't know of her. And to them, it's just a cup and saucer with the Nova Scotia flag on it. That's all it is to them. It's Nova Scotia, right? Okay, right. What's going to happen to that when I'm gone? It's probably just going to end up being donated somewhere because they have no attachment to it. Or it may not last that long and get broken because it's a material thing. I also inherited one of these beauties from my dad. I love this thing. I love this thing more than I love the teacup. My husband doesn't love this thing. I'll tell you why. He went to Europe on a business trip, and he was gone for 5 weeks. And when he came home, he discovered that I could completely demolish an entire kitchen in 5 weeks with this thing. The only thing left in the kitchen, in the middle of the floor, was the stove and the fridge. Matriarchy rules. So, But eventually that'll just be sitting in someone's shed, I suppose. Or it'll be buried with me. When my son was about 10 years old, I sort of talked him into spending some time with his great-grandfather. And he said, "What am I supposed to do with him?" And I said, "Just go talk to him. You know, he's sitting over there all by himself." I said, "Your great-grandpa was born in 1900. That's pretty amazing." He said, "So, okay, I'll go talk to him." And I said, "Just go ask him what he did when he was a little boy." So he did. Well, Grandpa's eyes lit up and he started talking, and my son was asking him questions, and because I basically forced him to, and spend some time with him. Good old great-grandpa lived to be 100. At the time of that conversation, great-grandpa could still remember quite a bit, because he was born in 1900. You can imagine the things he had seen over his lifetime. My son went on to become an attorney with a love of history. So many times now, my son will say how he wished he'd paid more attention to good old great-grandpa and got more information out of him, while I kicked myself for not writing down the things that he and great-grandpa had talked about. What a golden nugget we had missed that day. I mention to you these things to point out how special moments happen from day to day, and to be aware of them and to record them as they're happening. This is your family history in the making. What happens today is tomorrow's history. So that's something you want to think about as you're trying to get ready to do your family history. Don't always be thinking about the past. Think about today as well, because today is tomorrow's history. So be making those notes as you're going along. So what is the proper thing to put in a family story? Well, you know what? This is your story. I can't stand up here and tell you what to put in it. I can tell you what not to put in it, but I can't tell you what entirely to put in it. You're going to have to use some common sense. You're going to have to, have happy feelies, but don't make it like Pollyanna. Don't make it all happy, but don't make it all sad. You're going to have to just have you're going to state facts, and you're going to use common sense. That's basically what you're going to do with your family history. And even though you're living in the present and you're writing, you start with yourself, your family history will be written in the past tense. So you're writing about yourself, you're going to write it as past tense. And I'll show you that in a minute. So we're going to start with some organization, because you can't start with anything unless you're organized. Okay? So, isn't that disgusting? If you were going to bake a cake, if you were going to bake a cake, would you bake a cake there? No. Because, you cannot bake a cake in something that looks like that. Well, it's the same with doing your family history or genealogy. You cannot have a box of documents or a box of notes or a box of journal entries and memories scattered all over the place and say, I'm going to write a history on Uncle John. I need Uncle John's birth certificate. And you go through all the boxes and you find Uncle John's birth certificate and you go, okay, Uncle John was born in South Branch, Newfoundland in 1885, blah, 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 and you write this cute little paragraph. Okay, what do I do next? Oh, Uncle John must have got married. So you go through all the boxes again, and you go and look for everything. I find his marriage certificate. So you come back to your family history, and you go, Uncle John got married to Aunt Sarah at such a time, in such a place, blah, 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 beautiful wedding, whatever. Okay, what do I do next? Well, they must have had children, so you go through all the boxes again. So you get the idea. So what do you need to do? You need to get organized. You cannot write anything that way. It's going to take you 50 years just to write about Uncle John. So one of the really cool ways to do this is to create a file folder for Uncle John, good old Uncle John, And so you'll do one folder for Uncle John and Aunt Sarah, because she's become a part of his family. So you'll do Uncle John and Aunt Sarah go in the same folder, and everything about them. So all their marriage, both their birth certificates, their marriage certificate, their death certificates will go in the same folder. All their children will go in the same folder until their children get married. Once their children get married, they get their own folder. Then as couples will become the next folder. Does that make sense? However, if they have a child that does not get married, or that is deceased before marriage, or is stillborn or child death, they stay in the folder with mom and dad. They do not move along. They just stay with mom and dad. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. And any children after, and the wife moves with the husband. Great organization there. Clear to find. Very easy to find when it's done that way. Now, some people like to do it this way. I'm going to use the surname LeBlanc because it's there. So some people put LeBlanc-birth certificates, and they put everybody's birth certificates in one. And then they'll put LeBlanc-death certificates, put all the death certificates in one. Well, you're still going to spend time, a lot of time. Okay, I need to find a birth certificate for Charles LeBlanc. So you're going to pull out the birth certificate file and go through all of them to find Charles LeBlanc. Well, there could be 20 Charles LeBlancs. Okay, just so you know. When you get back there, everybody was named after everybody. As you go back a few generations, trust me, especially in the Catholic religion, you have a million Mary Catherines. So they're going to be, that's time consuming. So when you do it this way, and you have the first generation, then you do that, and then the second generation, then you do that, it's just so much easier. You can just go, pull it. But, you know, everyone has their own style, so you do what's best for you, but you do want to get organized. You can also do it in binders. I prefer file folders, but you can do it in binders, and you can also do them on the computer. You can set them up in file folders on the computer, so whichever floats your boat. But that is one way to do it. I know old style prefers it this way. The elderly don't tend to be computer savvy and tend to prefer it this way sometimes. Okay, this is a big problem. This is what we call not being able to settle on just one thing. And this is so easy to do with family history and genealogy because of memory problems. And I'm not saying we forget, it's remember too much. So we start our family history and we start with ourselves. That's basically, we should start with ourselves. And so I'm going to write my family history, and I'm thinking, okay, I was born in Glace Bay on March 10th, 1959. This is simple. I got a whole paragraph here, okay? My mother told me I was born, there was a snowstorm. I can write that, you know, I'm good, I'm going along. Small little paragraph, because how much can happen on the day of your birth, really, okay? And then I come up, oh, she told me some memories about when I first started school. And so it's all about me. It's always all about me until you reach a certain age. Oh, then all of a sudden, there's some memories about me and my sister. And then I'm like, oh, I remember a time me and my sister did this. And all of a sudden, my mind starts jumping to my sister. And so my monkey brain starts jumping to a different branch on the family tree. And so now I'm starting to think about my sister about her history instead of my history. And so then, I'm a few years down the road, maybe in the teenage years, I have 6 siblings, okay? And there's a lot of memories, because we are all 9 years apart. There's 9 years between those 7 kids. So we did a lot together, and there's a lot of memories there. When the youngest was 13, the oldest was 19. We were all teenagers at the same time. Bless my mother. And you can well imagine. So when I'm in the teenagers and I'm like trying to write down some, important points, you don't write everything. You just, you're going to write the major things. And so I'm jumping from my sister to my brother to my sister to my brother. Well, I'm not writing about their family, their history at that point. I'm only trying to focus on mine. But if I don't tame my monkey brain, I'm jumping from my branch to my sister's branch to my brother's branch. Does that make sense? So you need to try and focus. You can mention your siblings in your history, but you don't want to write their history in your history. Their history is separate. Does that make sense? Okay. I know, and it's really hard, but that's an exercise you need to focus on. So you want to stay focused on one person at a time. Don't let your mind jump from branch to branch on the family tree. Let's see. So when you're doing your family history and you quote a birth date, you have to have a source in your family history. If you quote a marriage date, you have to quote a source. If you quote a death date, you have to quote a source. Okay, you have to have those sources at the bottom. Does everybody know how to do their sources? Okay. Email me. I'll show you how to do those. You cannot quote from the Cape Breton Historical Society or the Nova Scotia website.
Vital stats.
Vital statistics. You can't quote from. You can't say you got this birth certificate from Vital Statistics without sourcing them at the bottom of your page. Okay. So I just email me. My email is going to be at the end of here, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay. And it's really easy. And once you do one, you just copy and paste. It's really easy. Don't panic over that. In fact, when I email you back, I'll send you the cheat sheet. There's a cheat sheet. It's really, really easy. I don't want you to panic. Anytime you quote anybody else that's not you, you kind of have to put the source in, the citation. You probably feel like you don't have to because your family history will stay in the family. But I'm just keeping you honest, okay? One thing I think it's important to do, if you have someone in your family who's elderly, older than you, who still has family ties with you, interview them now. Get them interviewed now. Sit down with them, record them, get their voices interviewed, ask them questions. Do it now. So important. Don't disregard their stories. Get them down, get them written, get their voices recorded. Don't disrespect what they've already learned, what they've already lived through. Show them pictures. I want to show you this. I did this book up for my parents a few years ago, and I did mostly pictures, and I didn't realize the impact it was going to have on them. It was for their 60th wedding anniversary, and I'll leave it up here so you can glance through it afterwards. And after the party, my parents were sitting and going through it, and as they were going through it, 60th wedding anniversary, just the two of them were sitting in the room going through it. All of a sudden, these pictures started triggering memories, and I didn't realize that was going to happen. And I was sitting in the room listening to them because they didn't know I was eavesdropping on them. And I realized what a trigger this was. So I started taking notes as they were talking. They didn't know I was doing that either. And this is kind of like just before they got married. And this is a picture of their 7 children. This is a picture of their 7 children early on. What a treasure. This is what you want to leave to your family, not a teacup, not a crowbar. This is what they look at all the time. This is what their grandchildren look at all the time. This is what their grandchildren want, not a teacup. This is what they get. So that's the importance of family history, right there. So although this is mostly pictures, now I've got to put the stories to it. So it's worth more than $1 million. I can't even stress how important that is. As you're doing your family history, are we running low on time? We're doing good? Again, talking to those older than you, just finishing that up. So show them the pictures because it triggers memories, especially those who have early Alzheimer's. You will not believe the change that will come over them. Record what they're saying. This is one of the best ways to get a ton of small details about their parents, siblings, and their growing up years. Or long-term memory is amazing. Don't lose those moments. Okay, a few things that you'll need to remember when writing your family history is respect. I just want to share a short story with you. On April 24th of this year, I had the opportunity to listen to a World War II survivor of Iwo Jima and liberator of the Battle of Guam, who came to speak to us at our law firm. He was 92 years young. He travels all over the world speaking to large groups of people about the experiences he has had in his life. In fact, he says he knows a guy from Nova Scotia who is a collector, and he collects things like hammers. Imagine that, he says. Everyone turned to me and looked at me like I somehow knew this guy, because they all knew I was from Nova Scotia. Anyway, this gentleman was 17 years old when he enlisted as a United States Marine, and after only 2 weeks or so of training, he found himself on his way to Iwo Jima just that fast, only 2 weeks of training. No time to think about things, he said, and as he spoke, he never once referred to himself as a U.S. Marine. He was a United States Marine, and he never once referred to the Japanese other than anything but the Japanese people or the Japanese soldiers. No other names were acceptable, and no degradation was used. I tell you this story because this is the type of thing you want to remember when writing your family history. Always be respectful. Show your posterity who you really are, that you come from a people who are not prejudiced, who are educated, respectful, non-judgmental, positive in nature, and have a love for their fellow man. And when your posterity reads about their ancestors, they will be guided to follow in your footsteps instead of following unstable trends such as seen on social media. Give them a foundation to be proud of, one where they can build their future on the backs of their proud ancestors, because that's who you will be. And hopefully by your words of wisdom and strength, your posterity will build a better tomorrow for their descendants, because it's getting to be a rough world out there. Also, when writing your history, do your best to find out true details behind stories instead of relying on gossip. A famous quote from Abraham Lincoln goes something like this: "If you look for the bad in people expecting to find it, you surely will." And if you've ever watched Pollyanna, you've probably heard that quote. So, when you write your family history, you're going to write it. Oh, I love warm fuzzies. Don't make it all your family history, but a few of them are okay. This one I say all the time: you make my heart smile. So if someone makes your heart smile, tell them that, because you will make their day. Okay, so your family history will look something like this as you're writing your sentences. So an incorrect way to write a sentence in your family history will look like this: Charlie Waite was born in Newfoundland in 1885. He hated his French name, so he never used it. He also hated the Newfies, so he never referred to himself as one of them. He left Newfoundland, moved to Cape Breton, where he died in 1977. So to his posterity, he sounds like a pretty cranky old guy, doesn't he? You know, he was born in Newfoundland, that's a fact. He did move to Cape Breton, that's a fact. And he did die in Cape Breton, that's a fact. There's a few facts in there. but we tend to embellish things sometimes. The correct way to write this is Charles Sylvester LeBlanc, his correct name, was born 13 October 1910 is the correct way to put your dates in your family history. Day, month, spelled out, and year, no commas. In South Branch, Newfoundland, Canada, I have the little one there. There should be, oh, it's not there. There should be a little one there showing a citation mark, which would put you to the bottom of the page where you could put in your citation for Newfoundland vital statistics, okay? He died 17 January 1977. That should say in Glace Bay. It does.
It does.
Thank you. It doesn't on my paper.
Okay.
In Glace Bay, Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, Canada, and was buried in St. Joseph Cemetery, Reserve Mines, Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, Canada. And there would be another citation there, usually with another place to put another note for Nova Scotia vital statistics at that point. Then your family history would continue to say an explanation for that. The 1920 census of Newfoundland shows, and this is where you would explain this, why was he in Newfoundland, then he was in Cape Breton, and he died in Cape Breton, was buried there. The 1920 census of Newfoundland shows the family. You can see that the 1885 date is wrong, because he was actually born in 1910, okay? The 1920 census of Newfoundland shows the family listed under the surname of White. So, that's right, he was listed as Charles White. Since all listed family members are deceased, the truth behind the name change has been buried with them. So, because there's no explanation, you can put a sentence in your family history stating why. We don't know the reason why, so you can say that in your family history if you come across something like that. However, history and census records suggest a few answers. You can use the word suggest in your family history when you're writing about deceased relatives. You can't state, I know this, but you can say, census records suggest. You can say that. They may have begun to use the English version of LeBlanc due to the problems caused during and after the Acadian persecutions. We all know about those from our studies in school. His parents were found in Shetty Camp under the surname of LeBlanc, then in Newfoundland under the surname of White, then in Reserve Mines under the surname of LeBlanc. So they went back and forth, which shows they went from LeBlanc to White to LeBlanc, which shows that's what the Acadians went through. They kept changing their name back and forth. That doesn't mean he hated the Newfies. And you don't need to refer to Newfie in your family history. That's disrespectful. You say Newfoundland or Newfoundlanders, because they're good people. You don't want your descendants going, oh, Newfies, I have Newfie blood. You don't want to be doing that. That's not where we want to go with our family history. We don't want our descendants to say, I have weird ancestors. So let's keep it respectful. Privacy. If you have living relatives, you don't want to put private information at all in family history. Unless, of course, you're just keeping within the family and you have their permission. So never publish personal information on living relatives, and that includes genealogy. And I think most of you know that. We all know about the HIPAA laws and medical, is that American? HIPAA laws? Sorry. Backhanded compliments. Although you don't have to make your family history Facebook rosy, we don't have to make it negative either. Just keep it to facts and actual data. Backhanded compliments, which are the same as underhanded insults. Backhanded compliments. Backhanded means to slap someone with the back of your hand, or would you shake hands with someone with the back of your hand? No, because that would be a sign of insincerity. Underhanded insults are meant to cause hurt and tear at a person's self-esteem. It is meant to belittle and condescend. It's also a weapon for bullying and abuse. So that kind of thing you want to stay away from. My sister took my favorite sweater when we were in high school, and she tore it, and I will never forgive her for that. Don't put that in your family history.
It's always right.
See, I'm going to have a problem. Sarcasm. Now, there's an active word for you. This is why nighttime TV became popular. Now, there's sarcasm comes from the Greek verb sarcasian, and it's just seeped its way into all of our conversations. It is meant to tear flesh like a dog. That nasty little word is sharp and often satirical or ironic utterance designed to cut and give pain. Why? Who gets enjoyment out of that? Is that something you want to pass down in a family history book? Don't do it. It is one of today's main weapons for bullying, and it's out of control. So let's put a stop to it. Let's not pass that down to our children and grandchildren. And one of the worst ones of all, gossip. Those who gossip to you will gossip about you. It's a disease. If you can't bring yourself to refrain from gossiping about a person in your family history, then just state the facts about that person. If you and your sister haven't spoken for 25 years, just state her name and her birth date, and her death date if it makes you happy. But just don't go any further than that. Don't put anything else in there. It's just, there's no point to it. Because you know what, in the end it's going to make you look bad. Unfortunately, like I said, there's no perfect family. And sometimes that's the sad truth to life, you know. If you're going to do that kind of thing, it's going to show your character. And then people aren't going to want to read your family history, so don't bother writing it, because then it's only going to appear negative. And, you know, my mother always said, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. So briefly, I just want to talk about pictures. This is my favorite part, okay? I've heard it said that the eyes are the windows to the soul. I think that pictures are the windows to our ancestors and the doorway to our descendants. How I wish I could, don't you just wish you knew what your great-grandmother looked like? Or your great-great-grandmother? I'm such a nerd that I think about things like that. I just wish, like, why do I look the way I look? I would just love to know. I know I look like my mother and my father, but I just would love to know what my other ancestors look like. I'm lucky enough to have a few cherished black and white photos, and I'm sure all of you are, but the earliest known surviving photograph was taken in 1826. So to find photographs that survived the 1800s, there's not very many. But today, there's pictures everywhere. We are so lucky to have the pictures we have. So take the pictures. Take as many as you can. And the pictures you want to put in your family history, you don't have to put 20 pictures of the same thing in your family history. You just want to have those special moments. And you want to include such thing as, take a picture of the hospital you were born in. Take a picture of the school you attended. Take a picture of the street you grew up on, like, you know, an outdoor shot. Take a picture of the house you grew up in. Take a picture of your favorite pet. That's a pet we had for 15 years. That was the family pet. That's the one we all loved. Take a picture of your first car. Take a picture of your husband. No, I'm teasing. You do have lots of pictures of your husband. The things that you love. That's the truck my dad drove when, you don't see trucks like that anymore. So you want to have a truck. I think that's St. Anne's Church in Glace Bay. Yeah.
That's not the.
I think that's is that the one that burned down?
Yes.
Okay. And then,
Who's baby?
I believe that's Sophia.
Oh, is it Sophia?
Yeah.
Yeah. Agreed.
That's a great grandbaby. Yeah. I just think it's a cute picture. So you want to show progression. You want to show a birth, a young child, a teenager, young adult, marriage, middle-aged, elderly. Okay, so maybe a progression of about 5 pictures. And then you want a picture of you with maybe your parents and your grandparents. So maybe you want to look at about a range of 10 to 12 pictures. You don't want to overdo your family history with just all pictures. You want those pictures and then put stories to them. Okay, and you just want those special ones. And don't take a picture like this where you have someone standing and then a clock above their head, like right here. You know, get some nice ones and put them in your family history. So, besides the pictures, the obvious things that you want in your family history is your full name, where and when you were born, if you're married, of course, your spouse, your parents, your education, your occupation, your achievements, your favorite things, your talents, your medical conditions. That's important because your posterity may need those. Death, date, and place, you're not going to know that. Okay, that's something somebody will put in later. And cause of death. I wanted to talk a little bit about a wiki. Does everybody know what a wiki is? It's kind of like I call it a lost and found. Family Search for me is sort of like a wiki. And there's a lot of information on Family Search. And you can go in there. I have my family tree on Family Search. It's been changed so many times by other people I don't even know. So it's kind of open to the public. And on my Family Search is a picture of a headstone of my great-grandfather, and his name is Theophilus Gillard. And his name is spelled wrong on his tombstone. And so somebody went in and changed all the information to the name that's on his tombstone. Because they think that that's the correct name to spell it because that's what's on his tombstone. Well, that's not right because it's wrong on his tombstone. So somebody I don't know went in and changed it. So don't rely on stuff like that. The Find a Grave is a wiki. And so not all tombstones are correct. Okay? So when you find a tombstone, it's great information, but you have to find the death certificate or the funeral home information to back it up. So don't ever use the headstone as a final primary source because it's not, okay? So that's just a little golden nugget for you, okay? And for other sites that I don't know, I'm sure you all have your favorite. My favorite's Roots Magic. I love Roots Magic. It's private, nobody can get into it, it's all mine. That's just my personal private one. There are a lot of websites out there that say they have genealogy records and you pay a fee and you get into it. And all they've done is that they've gotten into other sites like the Historical Society or Family Search or Ancestry.com, and they've gone into like the Irish records and they've downloaded some, they put it onto another site and they've called it Irish Records, and then they say they've formed this other site, they want you to pay a fee, you get in, and all it is the records from the other site. So buyer beware, there are some of those out there. Unfortunately, there are even scams for this. So just be careful. Just go with the websites that you know. That's another golden nugget I'm just throwing into the middle of this. So as you, oh, I'm getting behind again. I love this little cartoon. So another reason to write your family history is because these children, these littles that are coming along are going to ask questions, you know? So Grandma sees Grandpa, even though he's passed away, she sees him in her grandchildren. His walk is in this one, his hair is in that one, and I'm sure grandmas or grandpas see that in those who have passed away. So the kind of questions you can ask the elderly are, what kind of games did Grandma play when she was a little girl? And I wonder what Grandpa's favorite cookies were. Did Dad always love to go fishing like I do? Where in the world did I get all this red hair? I wonder why I like chocolate so much. I wonder why I love to bake. You know, little kids will ask these questions if you prompt them. Get them interested in this and away from the laptops. Get them interested in this and away from those phones. This is what they should be thinking about. I just never seem to be able to stop talking. I wonder where I get that from. I can wiggle my ears. Did I inherit that from somebody? Am I the only one in the family that stutters? If they are, help them understand that. I can't seem to concentrate on reading. I wonder if someone else in the family has that problem. So let these children know, you know, you don't have to rely on friends. You don't have to follow the crowd. You have a family. You know, let's learn about them. Getting started on your family history, I have this little notebook that I keep, and day to day, I just jot down little things that are happening so that when I go to write my family history, I have them here. I don't have to rack my brain to remember things. Carry one of these with you, and as things are happening, it just takes 2 minutes to write down your little memories that are happening as they're happening. Okay, so this is great. I have relied on this so much, and it saved me a lot. And when I go to do my family yearbook, I just go to that. I'm like, oh yeah, it's all there. And of course, a calendar. In my calendar, I write down everything we're doing. I don't use it for a calendar. I use it for what we're doing on the day of. Then I use that, match it to my photos, and match it to the dates, and I'm good to go. Saved me on so many occasions. This is a really great tool. This is something I highly recommend. They're cheap. They don't cost a lot of money. So that's another tool I use all the time. It keeps me so organized. Easy to do. That's something I do on the go, and it's a present family history thing as I'm doing day to day. It's easier to do your family history now than to wait 20 years to do it. We're almost done. So why are you writing your family history? Your posterity will love the family history book. I promise you. This one here gets looked at all the time. You know why they love it? Because they're in it. That's why they love it. They love looking at their own pictures. Your posterity will love the family history book because as they grow older, they'll want to know more about their parents and who they are, and where they and who they were when they were younger. They are already wanting to add to it. Your posterity will love the family history book as they continue to grow older because they will continue to realize how important life is and how important family is. And they will want to grasp at those memories as they begin to start to fade of their parents and grandparents and other family members so that they can pass those stories onto their own posterity. So as my nieces here start to have their own families, I guarantee they're going to want to pass these stories down to their posterity as well. Then as they find themselves as the older generation, which unfortunately is going to happen, they will cling to the stories in those family histories to keep the memories alive as they watch their posterity continue on with the family traditions and as they pass along their love and wisdom for more generations to come. Remember, the more time you spend with someone, the more you connect with them. Think of a dear friend you've made and how over time that friendship has developed into a comfortable and warm relationship. Think of a special cousin you have and how over time that family bond has become more solid. Think of your mother, whether here with you still or gone to rest, and how your heart still beats in time with hers. Think of how your own child and how you would at any given time wrap your arms around them, whether newborn or grown, and love them tenderly as only a parent could. So I'll repeat, the more time you spend on your family history and genealogy, one and the same, the more you will connect with those family members you are writing about. I promise you. If you are spending time writing a family history for someone who has already passed away, I promise you, You will have a connection with them that will bless you immeasurably. You will connect with them on a level that only you will know. And as you do this, write about those feelings as well, so that your family will understand the importance of your family. So tell yourself, what is it that I can leave behind that will make my link in the family chain strong? What is it that I can do for my family? What can I contribute to my family right now, right here, while I'm still here? Give them the legacy of remembering you and adding their story to yours to pass it down to their posterity. It's another one of my, this is my all-time favorite comic. Give them the legacy of knowing their ancestors through the history they will have and the stories that will guide them, honor them, and teach them about who they are and connect them for eternity. Continue to bind your family chain and strengthen it with those things that matter and will stand the test of time: your name, your honor, and your story. I'm going to leave you my email so you can just email me and I'll answer any questions you have, and that about wraps it up. Thank you.
We have time for some questions and answers. If anybody has any questions they want to ask Patsy before we let her go. Don't be shy, you're my friend.
I wonder what sort of things she writes in that little journal entry. Like, what is it that triggers you to put in there? Like, what sort of things?
I mostly write about my grandkids.
That's good. They're precious.
Well, my son graduated from law school,
Okay.
and so on that day I took it with me and I wrote about, what was happening that day and, what a nice day it was and how he was honored. Then he was elected as councilman for a district in his city, and so I wrote about that day. And,
Okay.
so as the moments are happening, I write that down.
Okay.
Yeah. So that sort of thing.
Yeah, so that's what I was just wondering, like, what sort of thing, like, you don't say,
Special occasions.
just special occasions,
Yeah.
like maybe the first day they went to school,
Yeah,
something like that?
yeah. And I put the date
Yes.
where I'm there. It's kind of like a mini journal,
Yes.
what I'm doing that day. So I just carry it with me. I'm getting up there and the brain is starting to forget things.
Yeah, you're right.
No more questions? There's a question.
If a person were to start right now,
Mhm.
do you start with what's happening now? There's so much back there.
Oh, I would start with today and then. I would start with your own family history, but I would keep this going at the same time. I would just have this with you at all times. This is always with me. So I'd start that today, but then in the evening, like if you have a little time, just start with your own. Start making, writing a few paragraphs here, a few paragraphs there.
Your memories.
Yeah, you don't want to lose your memories. So you want to start kind of gathering them together too. But then you also want to keep this going. This isn't going to keep you busy. This is only like 5 minutes a day. And once you start doing this becomes a habit. Trust me, I've got a lot of these at home. Just make sure you put the date on top, or then you're going to go, when did I do that?
Just a little hint on that too. Don't overlook your siblings. I'm 3 years older than my brother. It's amazing the things I remember because I'm 3 years older that he doesn't remember. So don't forget your older brothers and sisters.
My sister remembers more than I do. So sometimes I ask her things, and she'll trigger my brain, my memories.
At the same occasion, do you remember 7 different dates?
Definitely, I try
The
to
girls
get
are right, and the boys are wrong.
Something about a
year. And I have it set up so I have like January, and I do up my January at the end of January, and then February I do the end of February. And so in December, when December's over, I just merge the whole year together and it's done.
Put it in,
It's done like in one of these.
okay.
So if anybody wants to look at this.
Where do you
down
get
there.
them done?
I do them.
While you make a book?
Yeah.
Yeah, she made the book, she made that poster over there.
Oh, okay.
And she wrote stories.
So yeah, and if you do have a big memory, like my mother gave us lots of really big memories. She was great at that. And so if you do have a really big memory, you can put it into a book and just make a little storybook out of it. So don't limit yourself. The world is yours. Make your stories happen. So you're welcome to look at this if you want to. And there's a little picture thing there for you as a little gift or whatever. So you're all, I made one of these for all of you too. Yes? Okay.
Oh, just a word of advice, if you're keeping your photo album, identify the subject and date the picture.
Yes.
I have
Pictures
several
are-
old albums, but I haven't improved since we've been in.
Yeah, put names with them.
Everybody does it.
I think it's on the, you want to say who the author is and when it was made on the inside cover.
Yeah.
No,
The old pictures we've got, we don't know who's in them.
Some of them weren't dated, so yeah, we didn't know.
Yeah.
Some of them are, some of them aren't.
Some of the names, and you don't know who they are.
And so if you do have some pictures that aren't dated and you still have people in your family who would know, get them dated as quickly as you can.
Another thing you might want to keep track of when you're doing a history of your family, talk to your kids. I hear my kids talking, like a couple of years ago when we had our 40th wedding anniversary, everybody came from everywhere. And at night they just yacked and yacked, and I get too tired, I go to bed. But they keep me awake, and I'd be listening to their stories. And they'd be telling me, do you remember when Mom and Dad did this? I don't remember it. They remember it. I was right my crazy, getting it down. But, you know, your kids will remember things that are important to them that could slip your mind and not get in your family history at all. So talk to your kids too.
I have a question about your file folder.
Yes?
So, for example, say your personal one. So how would you do it with your kids? Say I met these kids and the dates and that, and then they get married. So, are you listing them on your file folder, yours and your husband's file folder, and then moving them into another? Do you say transfer to, or that they just married on your folder? Would you say
They still want to show
your child
Oh,
married
so-
so-and-so on this
Right.
date, and then move the rest of their information, their birth certificate, and that into
So my
theirs?
family group sheet is in the front of my file folder. And so it would list my husband and myself and our 4 children.
Right.
And so our daughter's first, and so she married, and so her birth record and everything moved over to her husband's file, and so she's now under his. But on the family group record, it shows that she married him, and so naturally we would go
You just
look
know.
under her new record.
So
Does that make
when in
sense?
the future, can use that as a reference and then go to that.
Yeah, so I always look at the family group record to see if there's a marriage, then I'd go, oh, I'll go look at the new file.
Yeah, but they're on.
If there's
their
no
sheet.
marriage, then I know it stayed in the family file.
Okay.
We have forms like that in our office there that can help you keep track of that too. Family group sheets, as you referred to, that keeps you and your spouse and all your kids in one place. You're not hunting through stacks of papers trying to find things. It's just, as Patsy said, the key to this is to stay organized. And if you're not organized, you will waste incredible amounts of time looking for information that you've already found because you can't remember where you put it. So you stay organized. Big difference.
Me and my sister, it was only a couple of years ago that we got into the family tree sort of thing. And up until that point, none of our kids, or my kids, ever knew names of ancestors or anything like that until we started this. And I'm there, you know, your grandmother was an acreage, she was from Newfoundland, and blah, blah, blah. So my son, who's 29, he loves old books, and he goes to Ed's used bookstore.
Ed's bookstore, yeah.
So I was sitting out in the man cave one night, and he comes out with this book, and he says, Mom, you might want to look at this book. And he's had it for a couple of years. And I looked at the book, and it was called Sybil and the Bird's Nest. I opened up the cover, and here it was given to my grandmother, Emmeline Ackerman, by Mrs. Mifflin in 1906, and he bought it at Ed's, not knowing the connection.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. And
He just wanted to have it actually on books.
yes, and it was because
Their
of,
grandmothers.
yeah, it was only when I started doing this that I brought him into it, you know, knowing this. And since then, he's found 3 other books.
So now he's actually looking and seeing what he can find.
Yeah.
That's not a real isolated story too.
No,
We hear
it's not.
wonderful stories like that
Yeah.
all the time. And just something's working and it's connecting you somehow.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing.
You know, I know someone who was trying to find an ancestor through a migration trail because they lost track of where they had migrated to. And you know where they found them? In a recipe book.
Really?
Yeah, they're like, they had made, someone in some area made a recipe book and she had submitted a recipe and so her name was in it and they're like, she was in this area at this time because because she had submitted a recipe and that's how they found her.
Wow.
So you just never know.
Exactly. Because I was mentioning this to my brother and about Ed's used bookstore, and he, because we don't know, we never got books there. So how did it end up there? And I was telling my brother, and he said, well, someone in the family lived above Sid's Used Furniture,
Mm-hmm.
which is Ed's bookstore. So were they found there, or you know what I mean? So it's like a mystery. Put your thinking cap on and keep going.
Okay, so we're sort of going once, twice, 3 times on the questions. Each question in before the mic's off. No? Okay, thanks a lot for coming. You want to have a look at Patsy's book? It's right here on the...
Hey.